there are all sorts of alternatives springing up on the potential horizon. I mean, it's definitely the case. Now, it's not easy to duplicate a university online. Now, various attempts have been made to do this, and they usually suffer from the delusion that a university is primarily lectures, exams, and accreditation. So I suppose if you had to extract out 3 things that universities do, those might be the most obvious. But you should never, I read a great book a long while ago when I was a kid called Systemantics, and one of the maxims of this book, John Gall wrote it, was the system does not do what its name says it does. And that's a lovely thing to keep in the back of your mind. And it isn't obvious what universities do. You know, they provide, well, so why pay $150,000 to go to university? Well, how about to find a wife or a husband? Right? That might, just that alone, because you have a select pool then of people who are roughly your, say, intellectual and social peers. The universities for a long time did a pretty good job of screening applicants, and so it might be worth $150,000 in 4 years if one of the things you accomplish between the ages of 18 and 22 is you meet the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with. That's a big deal. Well, it gives you 4 years to mature. It gives you 4 years to learn how to be independent. It gives you 4 years, it allows you to purchase a socially sanctioned identity for 4 years that you have to make some sacrifices to maintain. Let's say you have to go to class and study, but while you're doing that, you can actually think a little bit, you can learn to be a citizen, you can contemplate your future, you can experiment, and you can all do that while you're becoming more mature and independent and looking for a partner. And the universities do provide all of that, and you know, God only knows, maybe that's enough even without the classes. It's not easy to duplicate that online. Having said that, the possibilities for technology-mediated education are so vast now that they're almost incalculable. And the technology that enables education to proceed is developing at an unbelievably rapid rate. And so it's certainly possible that alternatives to the technical education system that we have now are going to pop up very, very quickly and very effectively. I mean, I'm involved, my daughter and I primarily at the moment are working on an enterprise called Peterson Academy, and we have 30 professors already signed up and have recorded a number of courses. We think we can drive the cost of a Bachelor of Education, a Bachelor of Arts, that's our first target. We figure we can drive the cost of that down to $4,000. She thinks we can do it for half that. So now, you know, that's sort of, you know, that's premature applause, because that's a hell of a lot easier said than done. But I don't think it's impossible, and I think the universities are doing such a spectacularly terrible job, especially at providing education in the humanities now, that you wouldn't have to put together that credible an alternative to be able to cut them off at the knees, and that's basically the plan. And so I'm not pessimistic in terms of what the world has to offer on the front of general mass education. I think we have opportunities there that have never been available to people in the entire course of history. I mean, even on the podcast front, let's say, it's become pretty clear to me that the audience of people who can watch and listen is probably 10 times as big as the audience that can or will read. And so that's quite the multiplying factor. And it's certainly the case now that it's far easier for many people to do a 3-hour lecture or a series of 3-hour lectures on YouTube and publish that instantly at 0 cost and reach far more people than they'd ever reach with a book. And this is not to say that I have anything against books, because books make you think rigorously for a long period of time, but man, there's lots of technologies that are sitting there waiting to be utilized intelligently to give the universities a run for their money. Yeah. Well, the other thing that seems to be happening too, although the evidence on this is mixed, is, you know, increasingly universities, especially on the arts side of the spectrum, let's say, are dominated by females. It's about 2 to 1 in many places now. But turns out that the women stop attending once the ratio falls below 2 to 1. And unsurprisingly, because as I said, part of the reason that universities exist is so that young people can go off and find a viable mate. And if that function has been decimated, and it's already been decimated, because the picture's actually more dreadful than you'd expect just looking at the 2 to 1 ratio. Because it doesn't mean there's 2 girls for every guy like the Beach Boys song. It means that the pool of eligible men has shrunk to almost non-existent, and well, the pool of desperate men has remained the same. And that's technically true, and this is very frustrating for young women. And so the men are starting to bail out of the universities like mad, and that's been happening really over about a 20-year period. But when the boys leave, the girls will leave too. So it'll just take longer. So now, will that be a net benefit in terms of freedom of speech? I don't know. Things are so unstable right now and changing so rapidly. I can't really claim to see more than about 6 months to a year ahead at most. I mean, not only because things are so stable and strange politically, but there are things, and everyone in the audience should know this, there are things coming down the pipeline on the artificial intelligence front that are just going to make your hair stand on end within the next year, because there is so much transformation going on in that domain. And that's been the case particularly for the last 6 months, that it's almost unimaginable